One day I toured a mansion of rare and aged beauty, and learned that long ago the house was filled with joyful song. The furnishings bore witness to the wealth the folks had known. I thought as I admired the view, there's an everlasting home.
Well, Chortle said he would horn me into the show, and lo and behold, we have that lyrically and literally. Welcome to the latest episode of Presbycast. We continue to press on with the spirit of our patron saints, Mike Leach, Jay Gresham Machen, Peter Hitchens. We're glad you could all be here with us. We've got recurring guests on the show. With one of them, he and I are in a everlasting feud to try to make each other laugh hard enough to derail the show. Every time we're on together, he knows exactly who he is. So we're going to see if we can continue this series. But it's been such a quiet week. We just have no idea what we're going to talk about. We're all locked in our homes and nothing is going on except what the kids call S-posting online. And boy, have they been doing it. But we should, before we get started, we lost someone very, very important to Presbycast this week. It's fair to say that without whom we would not be celebrating the most important holiday of the year. That is Jerry Stiller, father of George. Well, father of Ben Stiller, but TV father of George. And so for those of you who still have your Festus polls up, you can put those at half-mast for the foreseeable future. I've got a lot of problems with you people, and one of them is that he's not around anymore because Jerry Stiller was awesome. So we just want to take...
I've got a problem, too. I think your internet connection has the Wuhan flu tonight.
This is possible.
Okay. Well, we'll persist and push through, of course.
This one's for you, Jerry.
Yep. We have a lot of problems with each other sometimes. But we might talk about a few problems tonight. Well, we've got our show Ombudsman and a serial call-in friend. He's not the third Presbycaster. He's like the fifth, but Chris Drew up there, and it's probably, I don't know, they probably got 8 inches of snow up there. But there was a little background noise, so we'll just bring Amish up first. Oh, and there it is. This is a family show, and we can hear his entire family in the background. and it's a large one. It's a large one. So we've got several W's to talk about, and one of them's worship. So we were at church together Sunday, but I couldn't see your facial expressions because you had a mask on, and I couldn't get within 10 feet of you, and I was busy. So we barely saw each other, though we were at church together. And that was weird, right?
Oh, definitely.
No hugs.
No hugs. I'm a hugger, serial hugger, serial guest on Presbycast. But no, it was great. It was great. Even though everybody was looking like they're about to rob a train, it looked like it was a great time. And it's last time I was on the show, I made a comment just about like what a blessing the live streaming was, and it was just really good to be able to at least see people and talk with people face mask to face mask. So yeah, it was a good week this week.
So we should probably kind of go around the horn and talk about what last Sunday was like for everyone. Resby, I don't think I heard what your experience was, if indeed there was one.
Our plan up until the night before we went to bed was actually to go in person. And then we remembered that our youngest child had an elective procedure a few nights before. And we made the decision that we would stay back one more week just to be absolutely sure.
So you've been at a medical facility.
Yeah. We actually we found a guy behind a dumpster in a back alley. He would blow tobacco smoke on everything, and then that would kind of sterilize it. But no, we live casted one additional week. We're hoping to be able to go in person, whether or not it'll be outdoors or what. We usually get kind of an email about 24, 48 hours ahead of time. But I could tell just by watching the live stream that our pastor was extremely relieved to have more than the number of people that he had in the service recently. You could see it in his body language. He was just to see some semblance of getting back to normal was a big relief.
A very interesting thing. We had 3 services. The goal was to have no more than 50, and that's about what we averaged. And the pastor preached at 9 and 11. He preached the same sermon, ostensibly, but they were very different. He's not a manuscript guy, and sermons were just about almost completely different with the same text and with the same notes. So I thought that was interesting, an interesting case study that you wouldn't normally get to observe. But I was running the 2 live stream services, and the service that wasn't live streamed, I was running the sound. So it was a full day. So tell us, Chris, up there in the frozen tundra, what's it look like in your area?
Well, in our area, the county where our church meets is Grand Forks County, and it's a pretty populous county, one of the top metropolitan areas in North Dakota.
Well, I should say you're an OPC megachurch pastor. I forgot to introduce you that
so
way.
We have all kinds of additional considerations. No, we're actually a tiny church, and we, as many of the listeners to Presbycast know, our landlord is a megachurch, probably the largest church in Grand Forks, if not one of the largest. We actually have resumed worship now. We had our second service together as a church last Sunday, and we're going to continue on. The prevalence of the virus here has been when you compare our county with other counties in North Dakota, our county has been pretty light given its size population-wise. We have one county in North Dakota, Cass County, that's been hit particularly hard. Our county had a big uptick when testing increased, and then we had a meatpacking, or not a meatpacking plant, but it's a company that makes turbine blades for big wind turbine projects, had an outbreak that accounted for quite a few cases, but fatality rate in North Dakota has been relatively low, thank God. And with the megachurch still not meeting down the hall from us, suspending their services, we felt like actually that we could and maintain, good hygiene. We have a restricted set of activities on the Lord's Day. It's just worship. We don't have our normal weekly fellowship time. We've suspended Sunday morning Bible study, but we anticipate that those restrictions will probably go away, particularly towards the end of the month.
Okay, that's soon. Well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. One of the things that we've seen is that the worship of the church and the activities and ministries, that's an overused word, of the church have been greatly pared down and restricted. I think that could be a good thing. I think my church has always made the point that the most important thing we do is worship on Sunday, and everything else, while maybe good and helpful. It's kind of gravy, and well, we're just eating the biscuits right now, I guess, without the gravy, good as that is. But maybe it'll focus attention on the most important thing, and maybe it won't affect churches negatively as much who know that that's the most important thing. But what about your thoughts on that, Amish?
Well, I've got a kind of a question to pose to you. What I'm more interested in is how now that we're slowly getting back into church and we're taking the precautions, and I think like so we split up our service into 3 parts, and I think there was just like one member that chose not to wear a mask, and that's fine. But like, what are your thoughts on the Lord's Supper? I've got to admit, I've been hitting fast food restaurants. I hit Taco Bell today for lunch.
Oh, dude, we hit the mother load of Chinese takeout for supper. I mean, we've got at least 2 more meals of leftovers.
But yeah, I got the chalupa box, and it was just the most fantastic thing that I've ever eaten in about 2 months. I can't imagine that any less care is going to be put into the Lord's Supper, and you see from like local governments, just their guidelines are to maybe forego that in the meantime. But what are your thoughts on that, Chortles?
Well, I think there's a way to figure out. You can figure out a way to do it safely. From what I've heard, the handling of food is not a good way. It doesn't really transfer the virus. I think the idea is that if you pass a plate, everybody's touching the same thing. If everyone comes forward to a small table, then they're all kind of ganged up and touching the same things. Most people have experienced once in their life the little, it looks like a little coffee creamer, and it's got grape juice in it, and taped to the top of it is a wafer. It's this sealed, hygienic, disgusting Lord's Supper packet.
It is food. It's ecclesial fish food.
Yeah, and we had it at General Assembly one year, and it was really bad. And some churches are going to go that way, but I think they're sold out. I think they're back ordered from what I heard. You can't get them. Everybody wants them. I think there's a way to lay the elements out or to do it safely, but we haven't figured that out yet. And I think, it's going to be a month or 2. We've assumed, I'm not speaking out of school, I think we've just assumed that, maybe by the 1st of June, maybe by the 1st of July, we'll figure something out. But it's not, if you can do without, if you didn't do it online, you can probably wait another month or 2. And it's really not about absolute safety. It's about perception. It's about people's comfort level. And you don't want a third of the congregation not participating because they're weirded out by it. So that's a good question, but we haven't decided, and I know there are a lot of churches wrestling with it.
I'm just, I went to the local Walmart today, and the first time I went about a week and a half, I would say about 3/4 of the people that were walking around in the Walmart had masks, were taking precautions. I went today. It was the complete opposite. Like, it was just no regard for the, walk this way up the aisle. I think maybe like 1/4 of the people were actually wearing masks. I myself am just really comfortable with like going to fast food restaurants or takeout restaurants and eating from those. So I don't know. I don't see the Lord's Supper being a source of contention. But it'll be interesting to see.
Well, it can be done. So what thought have you given to that, Chris?
We're currently suspended with the Lord's Supper, but frankly, I don't anticipate that suspension lasting through the end of the month. I think that means basically we will have missed, I think, 2 of the normal administrations. I think the last one we had was right before things really started to clamp down in North Dakota and Minnesota. But I think the general feel here, and this is just a reflection of the region we're in, is that we perceive at least that we are in a generally safer location geographically. And I think as we examine the statistical reporting, one of the elders of the church, which I'm a member of and which supplies our church with a session, is head of emergency services for our county in central North Dakota. And he sends me all the latest statistics and news releases from the state of North Dakota. And it's very clear as you look at those documents that we're on a downward trend overall, even though our testing capacity has greatly increased. So it seems very clear we're on the other side of it, which is why I think a lot of normal activities in this part of the country will resume soon. And I think that's okay. I think what we're seeing across the country is a rather shotgun approach in many places where even in more relatively safer or rural areas, people are being told they can't do anything, and it just doesn't present the risk it does in some other areas. And there seems to be some difference of opinion about whether that's appropriate or not.
Well, we have a guest from another part of the country, actually not that far from me, certainly not from Resby. It's young Dale of the late short-lived podcast, The Reformed Millennials. Dale, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. What's your church situation in the age of Wuhan?
We are still on Zoom. A lot of churches have resorted to doing outside services.
Do they honk the amens like the Baptists?
Well, we're good Presbyterians, so we only say that in our hearts.
Honk in your heart. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's the only horn we use.
But our congregation has a lot of elderly people, and Boone itself has in the next few months, we're going to have a lot more people coming up from Florida. We got to deal with Florida drivers and the coronavirus they're going to bring with them, most likely. So we're just trying to.
And they've got to take the highway by my house too. So we are co-sufferers in this awful time.
We're in this together, Rusby. But
Amen.
Amen. But we're not really doing anything beyond Zoom, just because we have an elderly population, and so whenever we're able to gather in public again is probably when we're going to gather in public again.
All right, so you can see the range of so Chris has been meeting 2 weeks. We just met live last week for the first time, and Resby, he stays home and watches wrestling. So I think that's pretty much the range.
God bless Ron DeSantis.
I'm not even sure. Are you still with us, Resby?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Well, someone said something about wrestling, and you didn't immediately chime in. So I thought you.
It's
were
okay.
dead.
My tribe is growing.
Gosh.
I clearly have an evangelism technique that is working and bearing fruit across this nation. It should be noted that professional wrestling is the only real sport and the only sport that has not been interrupted by this cowardly jabroni virus. It's probably a virus. It's got a neck like a stack of dimes. Snap it in half. I'd like to see this virus go around with Kenta Kobashi. I don't think he could handle it.
Whatever that means. Not sure. All right, well, let's talk about so we talked about, first of all, worship. We covered that. let's talk about the state of the world. Outside of the church walls, Amish has already alluded a little bit to what he saw at Walmart. I think the natives are pretty much over it where I live. But we've got just like in the church, we have to be sensitive to people who have different comfort levels. In the world, there's going to be stress between parts of the country and people who think we should open everything up now, and people who think that the California strategy of closing down for 3 more months is warranted. So,
To be fair, that's Los Angeles County.
okay, well, that's California to me. It's all the same. No, I know it's not. So we don't want the stresses and the warfare of the world, as Machen said, to enter into the walls of the church. But how do we do that? How do we avoid that? I mean, and we all know what's coming up later this year. What are each of you guys' strategy for not letting that go the wrong way? First of all, Chris, you're a pastor. How do you keep the warfare of the world out of the church?
Well, one of the ways you do that is you keep the congregation focused on what is the biblical life of the church, and you focus on worship, you focus on the reading and proclamation of the word, you focus on the sacraments, you focus on prayer, you focus on restorative discipline, you focus on the things that the church does, and that sets the baseline for what people ought to expect when they're in the presence of the saints in divine worship. So I think part of it is that the church needs to very clearly demonstrate and distinguish itself that it does what it does, no matter what is going on outside in the world, so that you have a sense that it can be a refuge and if you will, an embassy of relief for the saints who do have to live in the world and do have to deal with the absolute commotion and chaos that is the current situation globally. And then you compound that with what's coming up in November, and where else are you going to go? The thing that I think about routinely when I think about that is the concluding chapter to Machen's Christianity and Liberalism, where he makes that great deal about where can people go when they're weary of all this, and they should be able to go join with God's people in worship and have a sense that of the divine majesty and grace that ultimately ought to govern their lives, and that should give them a sense of peace amidst this nutty world that we're in. And it's completely nuttier than, I'm 50 now, and I'm seeing anxiety in our culture that exceeds, in some cases, what I remember as a little boy during the Cold War. It's really very amazing, especially with this virus. Some people know I'm a bivocational pastor. I deal in technical support at the local university here, and I had somebody call me today, and the university announced that it's going to resume its normal, as close as they can, their normal courses on campus in the fall. And this person was just distraught and did not want to come back and did not want to stand in front of students and did not want to handle their papers, wanted to figure out if there's a way she could give the course from her office in the building to people who were in the building. It's really very interesting to see the effect this has had on some people in the larger culture. And again, I think the church has a wonderful, really pronounced opportunity at this time to exhibit level-headed peacefulness that is otherwise completely missing from the larger culture.
Well, Amish, you're a political guy, political junkie. You're all about the politics, so this is really tough for you, right?
I'm the exact opposite of that, and any political thoughts I funnel to my brother, and just keep that to myself. But not a political wonk, but I'm just kind of reminded, at the the first couple of weeks of this, the message was to lower the curve, and just a reminder that there's not any less people that are going to get infected by this virus. We're all going to get it eventually. It's just so that we don't overwhelm the hospitals. And I think that message just got kind of lost where, the expectation is, it's totally feasible that we're going to stay in our houses for 18 months and nobody's going to get affected by this. And that's not reality, but it's just, there hasn't been a unified message or realistic expectations that have been communicated to the public. I don't think. I returned to work last Thursday, and my job's done a pretty good job of just taking precautions. Masks in common areas, taking your temperature when you're walking into work. But there's still, I would say there's we're at 5% capacity, and I work for a very large, national company. And I would say the main headquarters is again at 5% capacity. So, I don't know what people's expectations are, but then you turn around, like I said, and you go to Walmart today, and you just have people crowded in the aisles. There's no masks. So whatever people thought, the government was supposed to do or keep people in their homes, it's just not going to shake out that way, I'm afraid.
Well, it's Walmart, so people are clean anyway.
Well, even at the local adult beverage store this weekend, it was just, I'm the only one walking in without a mask, and we're talking about maybe a walk-in closet, and 20 people being in there. So I don't know. I just don't think that it's workable.
Well, you better take your temperature daily. So we've got young Dale, and he hasn't. I was around I can remember Nixon. To be honest, I remember when Nixon was
innocent man
when he resigned,
he was framed.
Reagan was a controversial president, but we didn't have that kind of this kind of absolute hatred and strife that we have now. I was an 18 or 19-year-old socialist during the latter part of Reagan's era, and
weren't we all when we were 19?
I used to spit the word fascist out a lot, and I went from probably when I was 15, I thought Reagan was great, to I bought the line that he was a fascist by the time I was 19 or 20, and I got over that. But whoever said it earlier, I think it was Chris, there's no comparison between the environment today and the environment then. There's just not any. So Dale, what do you, you're a conservative, politically active young man, but you don't want that at church, right?
I don't know. I really, this is all new. I'm 22 years old, and I've not lived in a world where there's been this kind of fear and anxiety about just going outside and living your life. I really don't. I remember. Okay, so I do remember vaguely the aftermath of 9/11, where people were afraid to do a lot of things. I was about 3 or 4 years old at that point, but I had some idea that things were changing. My parents were a little bit more on edge before or afterward than they were before. I actually remember my parents coming to get me out of daycare when the towers came down.
Oh, you're awfully young, Daryl. You're all Dale. I called you Daryl. That's pretty amazing. But
isn't it? Though?
Yeah.
All you guys remember that. And here I am. I remember the days when I remember I remember myself calling Trump this evil, horrible, no good, very bad man in the same way that you called Reagan that, even though, Reagan was the proper right-wing deity, at least for the Republican Party. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This is weird. We're actually the UNC school system. I think somebody mentioned the colleges in their areas going back to school. We are too in UNC school system, and so I don't know what's going to happen with that either, because a lot of students are not going to college this year after all, which they shouldn't anyway. But I shouldn't have taken a virus to tell them they don't need to go to college. But whatever. I went to college because I had to, not because I wanted to.
Well, it was a condition of your probation, was it not?
That's what I was told.
Okay. Well, I just want to full disclosure here. All right. Well, tonight's Fun with Baptist segment has a little relevance to what we're talking about. Let's play the intro, and this is not as I don't know. It's not as lively as some of our Fun with Baptist segments, but I think we're all going to be happy that we don't get lectures quite like this at our churches.
Welcome to Fun Baptists on your favorite podcast, Presbycast. And now, Baptists.
I had a man in Alabama send me a text yesterday. He's an airline pilot, or I think he's retired now. When I wrote my chapter on Korean Flight 007, he gave me a bunch of insight with maps, airline routing maps, and a bunch of other things. He asked me a question. He's read my books. He said, Brother Grady, do you think there's any connection between the coronavirus and President Trump offering to give away a portion of the state of Israel to those Arabs a few months ago? And you say Donald Trump's the good guy. He certainly is. President Truman was in the White House when I was born. I've never seen an administration like this in my whole life. Nothing close to it. As far as genuine, transparent, integrity, fulfilling promises, putting the United States really first. I've never seen anything like it. But Uzzah was a pretty sincere man when he tried to stop that ark from falling out of the wagon. Right. And God's sincere and not sincere. And I think Mr. Trump has made some mistakes in that regard, but he doesn't know any better. I don't think he knows any better. And I think, January 28th was the date he unveiled that peace proposal, which is going to create a Palestinian. I knew the Arabs would never accept it. They weren't even invited to the announcement ceremony. Trump knew they wouldn't accept it. And he was helping Netanyahu, who's in for the battle of his life politically and as far as corruption charges. He's on trial right now. And that was something to help Netanyahu. And that announcement was made on January the 28th. By that date, the coronavirus, the first outbreak, was 8 days old already. And they'd worked on that thing for 3 years, kind of like the Lord saw it coming, Like the black preacher said, did it ever occur to you that nothing occurs to God? So the Lord knew what was going on. But it's kind of interesting that, you just can't play that game with Bush and the Clintons and maybe give a pass to President Trump. Again, I have no question in my mind he doesn't realize what that's involving. He doesn't know that. I don't believe that. I believe his motives are very sincere. That's just how God is, though.
Okay, Chris, is that pretty much the content of your sermon last Sunday?
Oh, man.
Speculative, prophetic, geopolitical musing?
I was commenting in the chat here, if his text was Uzzah and the Ark, that's the worst sermon ever. These guys, I tell you what, man, they're a piece of work. And you probably got that from IFB Preacher Clips. I followed them on Twitter too. And
thank you for crediting him. Now, this sounds like the old late 70s, early 80s prophecy conference.
Yeah. It's, late great planet Earth kind of stuff. It just never ends with these folks. It's always the next thing.
So that's not the way we do it. But yeah, I thought that was your approach. Well, this is sort of a segue to something else we're going to talk about. This is the second part of Fun with Baptists. We are going to hear from a black IFB preacher. You may not believe that, but such a thing exists, and here we go.
But there's a difference between having God in you and then having God on you. And tonight, I'm scared tonight as I travel and preach and I meet a lot of Christians. I'm shocked to report to you tonight, most Christians don't have God on them. That's why they gossipers, backbiters, racists, racist. Hey, don't like the pastor, complain about everything. Don't like nothing. See, that's a problem with that. That's a logical evidence that person don't have God on them tonight.
Well, the on, not in distinction. You've been to seminary, Chris. Explain that one to me.
We didn't cover that. At my liberal mainline seminary, I don't think we covered that.
Well,
God
on you, in you, but not on you.
Oh man!
That was in a white church, by the way.
Where's the lie? Where's the lie?
Positions are important, I know, in the scriptures, but I don't recall that being a part of what it means to be regenerate.
I'm feeling really convicted right now about complaining about the backbiting about all the casserole that's being served at our monthly get together.
That's because we have a preponderance of Midwestern refugees and
former Baptists.
Oh, that too. Yeah. They just bring the can of beanie weenies, pretty much.
Vienna sausages all around.
So that's our reminder that some of these Baptists have it a little worse than we do. But we heard the black preacher talk about racism, and if you were a backbiter, you weren't a Christian, things like that. And we know we're not supposed to do that, but that's the other part of the world. We talked about the world and the Wuhan. Let's talk about the world and the woke. We all know there was a very unfortunate, sad, disturbing killing down in South Georgia, and it shows every evidence of firing back up a lot of racial animus in our country, which is all we need right now with an election and a virus and an economic disaster. Let's put in a little racial conflict. And so that's the other W, the woke. And it occurs to me that you have woke on the left, and you sort of have, what I'm going to call the Wilson woke on the right. And we might even lump James White in there, who hasn't had a good crisis, as we say. He's sort of lost it with a few tweets lately, and it's not going well for all that crowd. But what about this idea of, when I say woke, I'm talking about identity politics of one side or the other, really, and of a certain, maybe a certain imbalance. But what do we think about that? a right woke and a left woke?
As far as like the the killing at in Georgia goes,
And we don't know what happened.
we don't know what happened, but I mean, it's like left or right, and especially like just me being more exposed to the right, I guess, on Twitter. Just this rush to justify what happened, as if gunning down the street in your pickup truck and then trying to stop somebody from running down the street, with shotguns. And if that's happening to me, oh, well, he went up and he like tried to grab the shotgun from these guys. And it's just like, how are you going to react in that, in that situation? Like, I'd be fearful for my life too. And I might act in similar ways, but, who amongst us have not, like, I can count, I would need two hands to count how many times that I've like gone onto a construction site and just taken a look around just because it's neat. And, but that aside, just this rush, from both sides to just like try to Judge Judy this and, making it a point, this thing like lines up with, what I believe, politically and therefore, I'm going to take the stance and like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And, I wouldn't necessarily like categorize this as a woke thing as much as, people do have a right to be outraged about this. I mean, these guys killed somebody in the middle of the street, and were not arrested for it. And, I don't know.
Well, what we don't have, I don't think we should have, is a right to absolutely condemn anyone that has a different view than us on this. That's the wrong way to do it. And, you're either a hero or a murderer, and there's nothing else. There's nothing in between. And we know that the real life is considerably more complicated than that. Anyway, it doesn't bode well for the coming months. I remember the OJ trial, the low speed chase, all those things. And of course we had the 2014, 2015 events. And I think it's a growth industry. If that world is your thing, you're going to have plenty to do in the next several months.
Well, and if I can interject just briefly again, something that's like just a tragedy, something that's should be mourned, it being picked up and used for like political points. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like that is just the wrong way to go.
It's pretty gross, actually. It's pretty
what's
gross.
That do?
It's pretty gross that people do that. Like, when I saw the video initially, I was like, this shouldn't be a liberal or conservative thing. This shouldn't be were they racially motivated in the shooting or not? I mean, you can't prove a man's intent either. What happened to the common decency and courtesy of mourning with somebody who tragically lost the life of a loved one? What happened to that? We don't have that right now.
I've deliberately not watched that video. I know about the contents or whatever. I don't I don't feel particularly motivated to watch somebody be killed, even though. But I think what you've touched on, Dale, is true. I've become so jaded as I've gotten older with politics. I'm not disinterested in them or anything, but I think the longer I've been alive, the more I realize that so many of these people who ostensibly are there to represent us. I was talking to my wife earlier tonight. This, I think, the founders were right. They knew that the character of the human person, and they designed our civil polity to account for our depravity. And we're seeing it writ large now. And I think, and that jadedness extends even, unfortunately, to this horrible shooting, which, from what I know of the video, having not seen it, it's going to be hard to persuade me that this was not, I don't know, a case of murder. But at the same time, when you see how it is amplified by social media, by the press, which has a vested interest in making the most of it for the eyeballs that they get from it, and you can join that with the phenomena related to President Trump and the ratings that he gets the news. I mean, it's kind of interesting to me that almost the worst possible thing that could happen in the media would be for Trump not to be the president anymore. They would lose 99.9% of everything they talk about every day. But it's just an example of our human depravity. I listened to the episode you were talking about the Tiger King, and how the Tiger King is this wonderful
magic on the internet worldwide.
Right on. I haven't seen any of it, but I've heard about it. And I've heard the comment in Reformlandia over and over again, what a great show this is, for the primary reason that it really exposes how depraved human nature can be. But I don't think you need the Tiger King. I mean, the Tiger King is just really a summary of what's going on in our larger culture, politically, racially, economically, and otherwise.
So what you're saying is that Tiger King is our city of God. It is that brilliant of a work and should be taught in seminaries forever.
I actually don't disagree. It's that profound. And I'm not, I know a lot of what was discussed during that episode of Presbycast was a little bit tongue in cheek, but there is the reason it works well when you're talking about it and sort of even joking about it is it does sort of exemplify the depravity of our current moment. And I mean, it's just we're just very increasingly a Romans 1 society. And again, how will the church behave in that situation? And we've got elements in the church that think, well, we got to find ways to appeal to all these different elements somehow to get them in. And I'm not persuaded that's what we need to be doing at all. I'm persuaded we should be doing the opposite. People need an embassy from this. The faithful elect need an embassy, a place of rest, of Sabbath rest from this garbage.
And it's funny. It's like going on Facebook again, but having both like left and right friends, both sides turning into scolds for the most part. Of, well, if I'm making a list of people that have posted messages about animals dying, and if you don't come down and you condemn this in the harshest terms. And the other part of it is, well, if you don't believe these guys were just trying to do their duty and we're law-abiding citizens just trying to stop somebody from committing a felony, then you don't believe in America. And it's just so tiring. And like kind of what you talked about, Chris, just about the church kind of being like a rest from all this. And if you're giving into the hysteria one side or the other, you're ultimately cutting off half of the people. Mm-hmm. But it's like, yes, this is a terrible tragedy, and yes, like this guy shouldn't have been hunted down by citizens, and yes, like we should be mourning what happened, and just seeing this taken up as a political football is just sad.
Oh, it's sad. Yeah, and the Tiger King phenomenon has faded pretty quickly. But we did hear that Nicolas Cage is going to play Tiger King in a movie that will surely be horrific. But that is what it is.
That's that statement you just made is an ironclad lock statement.
You couldn't. There are no bad Nick Cage movies. The man is an Oscar winner.
That just doesn't say anything about the Oscars at all. Then
did he win an Oscar Mayer wiener? Is that
what watch Raising Arizona and tell me that man's not a genius.
Well, that is an excellent movie, and the reason it's an excellent movie is the last word spoken in that movie is Utah, is where I'm from.
His Left Behind movie was actually pretty horrific.
Wow, it's so weird. I never would have imagined. But because it's Nick Cage, it has to be better than the other version.
I mean, I'll give Kirk Cameron some credit. At least he didn't just leave himself driving a plane or flying a plane. That's all Nick Cage did in the Left Behind movie. All he did was fly a plane. It's pretty intense, actually, but I mean, it's all that happened.
It wasn't intense. It was in a plane.
Well, I mean, a lot of things can happen in the air. What happens in the air is pretty intense. I hate flying, so I mean,
were there snakes?
Intense.
Were there snakes? Were there snakes on the plane?
I don't remember. It's been about 4 years since I've seen the movie.
All right, so here's a question. There are issues like this thing in Georgia. If you don't comment on it, you are presumed unrighteous or not concerned enough. How do you deal with that? I mean, you just have to. I don't know. Do you ignore it? But we're talking about virtue signaling here. But that's out there. But I'm increasingly convinced that we don't have to comment on everything. We don't have to have an opinion on everything. It's not a mark of holiness and righteousness to have an opinion on everything. Are we agreed on that?
As the low information Presbyterian and low information voter of record, I will actually weigh in and comment in agreement with that. I think people get into very weird territory intellectually when they demand you speak on some things but not others. Like Chris, I'm not gonna watch the video of it. I think no matter what happened, it's a horrible tragedy. I've already said too much, like more than I intended to. But I agree. For all the decrying that people do on Twitter, the fact that people are so like, oh, this place is a hellscape. I would quit this site if I could. But also, you have to talk about everything that goes in front of your mind and in front of your eyes. Like, you can't do both of those things at once. Like, my Twitter account exists solely for posting what I want to post. And so that means that there's a lot of stuff, believe it or not, that goes unposted. Actually, all my best stuff is what gets posted. So you should be thankful that I'm keeping the really bad stuff from you. So
your Twitter's confusing and frightening and scary
in its own way.
Yeah, but it's artisanally created to be that way.
Yep.
She get paid for it.
It's like a really well-made sandwich. There's layers to it. There's different flavors as you crunch through. There may even be different types of bread at either end of it. I don't know.
Pita.
I don't know. There's just this phenomena of people that are announcing that they're making lists on people who are commenting or not commenting on certain things, and it's just kind of like, My gosh, man! Like, when did social media turn into Scoldville? I don't understand it.
Yeah,
Our moralities are getting audited in real time.
audited. Yep. Morality audit. Yeah, I'm sure there's an algorithm for all that, and we're probably all failing as a result. If it's looking at our content.
Yeah, I almost think the objective should be to fail.
Yeah, or the only way to win is not to play.
Not to play the game.
That's a movie that Dale's not old enough for.
Yeah. He's like, what?
Wait, what was there a remake of?
No.
War Games? No. So
yeah, it was War. I feel like there was a remake, or there was going to be, but then I don't know.
So
yeah,
Dale,
War Games is a classic.
Watch the movie War Games on cable. Next Saturday afternoon. I'm sure it'll be on. And,
Will do.
Don't miss that.
I did watch The Big Short. The last time I was on this show, somebody told me to watch The Big Short, and I did watch it, and my mind was blown. It was a very good movie, I should say.
Yeah.
I thought.
I like Sylvia Peck's comment just now, and the fact that she wasn't. I hope she was invited to this, but the left is get woke, and the right is wake up, sheeple. Like it's just like I don't want to be a part of any of this.
Yeah, my family has actually been like on the side of Fire Fauci. Everybody's lying to us, and I'm like, look, guys, come on. I think a healthy skepticism of government's a good thing, but I don't think that the man intentionally wants the economy to be destroyed, and I don't think he intentionally wants people to die from this. I really don't.
Well, here I've got a take on that. Really, the public health people. This is their Super Bowl. This is the great. No, it is. And I've got a personal anecdote about this. I mean, I used to be a newspaper photographer. Dale, when I was your age, I was a full-time newspaper photographer.
Back in the olden days.
Yep, with black and white film and everything.
How did you survive?
Oh, I was in my element. But I would sit around on a Friday night or a Saturday night and just hoping that somebody would shoot somebody, or that there'd be a big wreck. And that was my specialty. Corona, an epidemic is the greatest thing. It's a professional opportunity. And it's everybody wants. Okay, here I'll quote a song lyric that Chris will know. Everybody wants to save the world. No, rule the world, but save the world too.
Tears for Fears.
Yep, you got it. And they're activists of a sort.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we almost have to be wary of activists of any type because they just tend to. They're I'm not being negative, but they're monomaniacal. They are about one thing, and we need balance. And it's for politicians to provide that. And but Twitter's not very good at it. Well, we have another friend who's joined us. Let's see if he's in evidence. Sean, our friend Sean, are you there?
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, so how are things in Texas?
Actually, we're good. We're trying to get back to normal. So we actually get to go out and work and shop and go to restaurants. And
God bless Greg Abbott.
And then no question about it. No question. So we're trying to get crank along.
Well, how many sit-down restaurants have you been to?
4.
I've been to 2.
There you go.
Yeah. A limited menu in some cases. But,
He's been working out too.
Not
Do what?
Every single time.
Okay, I have to share this. Well, I have to break in. We were talking about the coronavirus being the Super Bowl for epidemiologists and public health professionals. So Sylvia, classic, she says their Super Bowl and the ads suck. So cue the sappy piano music because Yeah. This crisis has been good for sleepy piano players. No
I will
doubt.
say, was it Carvana is like the only company who's elected to go with like an uplifting acoustic guitar instead. Let me tell you, brothers, it was a refreshing change. It was like a spritz of mint after eating some garlic. We loved it. I've bought no fewer than 6 cars in the last week because of it.
Bet your breath stinks.
Yeah. So Sean,
Well, I had to quit buying mints. Had to start buying cars.
So Sean, I know you've got opinions, and you've got a lot of problem with all the people. So tell us where we're going.
Yeah, where we're going, I have no idea. I got to tell you, I am shocked by the complacency and the willingness just to go along by such large segments of the population. I just find it shocking. I don't know. I don't know if it's I think it's definitely a generational gap at this point. I think you have a number of people who didn't grow up under a much more free, less nanny state environment, and so they don't know anything different. But I was born in '69, grew up through the '70s and '80s.
Nice.
And, I mean, we were all, a bunch of us were latchkey kids. We were in bigger families. We all kind of raised ourselves and took care of ourselves, and parents worked. And this helicoptering, it's one thing to have parents helicopter their kids, but this helicoptering of the bureaucrats that's just intolerable. Somebody like that, I can't stand it. Can't take it anymore.
So what are churches doing down in Texas?
They're opening this next weekend. I think, and I could have this wrong, but I think Abbott had laid out that by the 15th, churches could be open, or that weekend of the 15th. So I think and I know some of them already did open through, basically an e-ticket sort of invite kind of deal. But I think all the churches can officially open up this weekend. And of course, some have opened on a limited basis before then. So,
well, what do you? I know you think about these things. What do you see going forward with different regions of the country being locked down and others not? We talked about how this is going to create stress in the church.
I don't think Texas is going to turn back. There's too much. There was already too much momentum. We're already out. You're not going to be able to pull us back in. Other areas of the country who haven't started yet, I don't know. You look up at, I don't know how much compliance is actually going on in Michigan. From what I've seen come out of California, their latest today about shutting down to August, that won't hold. I can guarantee you that's not holding. Michigan, I don't know. I don't know how complacent that group is. Pennsylvania, I don't know how complacent that group is. I doubt New York is going to be able to be held back. I doubt New York City, you're going to be able to shut them down for much longer. If for no other reason, you're going to run out of money. I mean, we talk about figures anymore that none of us can really wrap our head around. We talk about $1 trillion debts and stuff like that. But I got to tell you, that's real. There's nobody who can hold that debt right now. Even China's balance sheet can't afford the amount of debt we're proposing. We're not coming out of this economically for probably a decade. And if Pelosi gets her $3 trillion deal, we're sunk. We won't see economic superpower again in our lifetime, most likely. So I don't know. I don't know what the other parts of the country are going to do. I can tell you Texas isn't turning back. There's no way.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Like that was, other than just wanting to get back to normal faster, I was happy to see that even with a Democratic governor, it seems like North Carolina is still on the, hey, we've done something. So we're not totally open, but we're moving in that direction. And there were definitely some things even in my local area that I was nervous might put a wrench, like right in the fourth quarter, like put a wrench in that May 8th order expiring. But I mean, it seems like, now that we're into it, again, my local, home improvement stores have never been this packed. The Walmart has never been this packed. Chick-fil-A continues to circle around the building, things like that. So I think I really do feel for some of these states where they haven't even started the snowball effect yet, where they haven't even started moving towards reopening. Just like you said, once people get used to things being back, they're not going to give them up a second time.
No.
It should be actively discouraged from giving it up again.
Okay.
No, I hope to see people out in the streets rebelling against these governors who are proposing, hey, we're issuing dictums of, we'll come out of lockdown when I think it's right. Excuse my French, but screw you. Stand back and watch.
A man got to have a code.
I mean, that needs to be the attitude at this point.
All right, let's talk.
Yeah,
Sean's a money man. Let's talk about the effect on churches and different kinds of churches. It occurs to me that your mega church and your wannabe mega church, I think the mid-size, just like in business, it's easy to be small, it's viable to be big, but the in-between can be the hardest to pull off. And I think there are a lot of churches that especially evangelical churches, that want to be mega churches. They've staffed up like a mega church. They've got the equipment of a mega church, but they may not have the ability to pull it off. And they've got, they're appealing to a kind of unchurched person, maybe people that are not so stable and plugged into things. It seems to me those churches are going to see huge financial losses in this crisis. Some churches like ours, they don't change much in times like these. My church was not even affected in 2008. We sailed right through that. But that's not the case for most churches, I'm told. I mean, I have pastors tell me that they're already, I've heard that there are churches in our area already hurting financially. Most took huge hits 2008. There's going to be a lot of layoffs, and there's going to be churches fold over this. There's going to be staffs that used to be 5 and now they're 2 or 1
Sure.
or 2.5. So what are your thoughts on the financial effect of this, specifically on the church? And then some people that have left are not coming back. I agree. I think that's probably the case too.
Well, I think that any of you would know as well as I would, if you're a church and you've got a debt that you're carrying, you've got a mortgage you're paying, this becomes much more difficult. And this isn't a Dave Ramsey rant. I think debt's fine as long as you can afford it. But if you've got debt, this becomes a lot tougher because your revenue streams are cut down. That debt payment has to be made. You can't just, it's not like payroll where you can just, okay, I'll take a cut or take a 10% or 20%. They're going to want their money. And so if you're a church that's got debt or got a lot of debt, and you've just had your contributions, or talk about it in terms of revenue stream knocked down, yeah, you might be in real trouble. Just depends on what the reserves are that they have out there. Churches have. I know the church I'm currently attending has really good reserves. I'm not even sure if they have any debt. They might, but the reserves are much more. They've got years worth of reserves for their entire budget, which is a rare situation. So they're in good shape. But there's a lot of churches that live hand to mouth. Every summer is already tough anyway. And based on what, if social media is any marker of what reality is, you're going to have some people, even when these things open up, who are going to be scared to come back for a while. They're going to be slow to come back. Sort of like you're having a rush right now.
Which is fine.
Yeah, sure it is. Yeah, I'm not judging them for it. It's just a reality.
Yeah, I think what we need to distinguish, and far from making political endorsements on the show, I do think that Governor Abbott in Texas made a great point. He said, we are giving people permission to open. We are not telling them that they have to.
Sure.
And so there is, sort of the phrase I've been bandying about. It's pretty new. It's never been heard much before, but it's my body, my choice. I feel like it's a pretty original phrase. I might get it catchphrased. And hopefully we can, just go back. But I don't know. It's this weird thing of this all or nothing approach, and I really try to not take Twitter as seriously. It's sort of a hobby horse of mine is disbelieving polls, because it seems like every 4 years we get this thing of like, hey, the polls say this must be true, and then the polls are wrong. And we're like, wow, why do we listen to this? Fast forward 4 years later, and the same people are saying, like, look at what these polls say, and every single time they're wrong. They were wrong on Brexit. They were wrong on Trump. They were wrong on Boris Johnson. I mean, they've been wrong on so much. And, and the models were wrong about this virus. So at a certain point, you just have to look around at you and yours and say, let me make the decision that I think is best.
Sure.
If I'm wrong, I'm going to pay for it. If I'm right, nobody loses.
No, and a lot of people might gain, including yourself, and that's the risk factor. I mean, there aren't 0% risk opportunities. Everything's a risk. Everything's an opportunity cost. But what are you going to do? You literally can't just hole up in your house your whole life. I mean, that'll make you sick too. That'll drive you nuts.
You can't hold up in your house for 18 months like they're proposing. You can't do that.
It's insane. I don't know how y'all have done it. I got declared essential, which I already knew. And so I've been able to go to work every day and go out to properties. I don't know how y'all, not saying you guys may have been able to as well, but there's a number of people really have stayed home. I have no idea how that's possible. I don't know how. I commend them for being able to pull off 45 days they've been able to do it. Beyond me, I wouldn't have been able to pull that off.
There's a certain advantage that some of these rural counties like mine have had, is that a lot of us, our houses are so far away already from each other. Many of us live near family members with whom we couldn't stop interacting, even if we wanted to. So, there's a certain sense where the only thing that's really changed for me is I'm saving a lot of money on gas, and I'm not watching baseball at night. And in a truthful statement, that's about it, because if I'm not going to work, it's too far to drive into town to go sit at a bar or something like that. That said, it's the first thing I'm going to do as soon as I can. But, I don't know how some of these city folk have done it. We've had some nights where we had family members over and we had a bonfire out back and roasted hot dogs, and we all kind of socially distanced as best that we could, but all of us have kids, so that gets a little bit muddied. But if I was in a city, if I lived in an apartment right now, if I was on the 4th story of just a generic apartment and they told me the communal spaces of my apartment was closed, and I in my house, I didn't have to. I would go walking the other 14 hours a day that I could. Like I would just have to be out.
And I've seen people basically do that. I mean, we have worked our dogs and our yards to the nub. I mean, it's just, we're all of us are either in great shape or in horrible shape, one of the two. But man.
Yeah, I kind of had the perfect storm of I was on vacation when all this dropped. So I already had like 10 pounds of vacation weight when I came back from Ohio. And then like gained another 10 pounds, like just on board eating the first 2 weeks. And, I was like, oh, I got to get an exercise regimen. And I've dropped that since then. Yeah, working from home was nice. Like it's nice to roll out of your bed. But like the very first day that, my work said, hey, if you want to, you can come back. And there was not a lot of takers. the main headquarters of where I work, there's 1,800 people that work there, and I'm going to say that it's 5% full right now. But I jumped on that train.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I'm just I'm done, and it's like the percentages that you're going to die from this is so small. It's just ridiculous. I don't know.
I'm just glad I had some savings before this whole thing started and managed my money well, because I've been out of work now for almost 2 months.
Wow.
And I work in a restaurant, so as you can imagine, it's been pretty difficult. But I can't speak for my other coworkers, but I can speak for myself that it's been all right for the most part. I got a stimulus check, whatever it's supposed to be. It's fake dollars in a couple of months anyway, because of inflation. Yeah, right. But I've sold some things to help make some ends meet, books that I'm never going to read anyway, and that I know I won't need in seminary. So I've done all right for the most part. But I know for a lot of my coworkers, it's getting really, 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 really difficult. But I don't even know if they'll even be back to work when we do open, which is probably not going to be until June.
Well, kudos to you, and as a positive, it was one of the things that I was really surprised at, because I manage a number of lower income apartment communities, and I thought April was just going to be just brutal, and then it wasn't. And then I thought May was just certainly May we'd get hammered. And quite frankly, a lot of people are pulling themselves inside out just to pay rent and utilities. And I was really impressed with that, because I thought everybody would just go, we don't have to pay rent. The eviction courts are closed. We're not even going to try. And people have more character than that. And I'm quite frankly surprised to find it, but I was glad to find it. So, but how many times can you do that? These guys were getting jobs on Craigslist and, like you said, pawning stuff. I mean, they were really putting themselves out there getting this done. But you can't ask people to do that for months on end. They might be able to pull it off once or twice, but then they're out of stuff to sell too.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of hoping, kind of going off it too. Like Twitter, our favorite hellscape, just announced that most of its employees can work from home indefinitely. So I've been a big proponent of working from home, like just to have the option to do it. I think there's a lot of good that I've seen from it in terms of rather than supporting an economy that's anywhere from 20 to 40 miles away from my local house. Now I'm spending right in my area, putting it back into the community. So I think there are some good things like that. I'm hoping that like work from home options expand, but I will never, I sort of want to take the moderate view here. I think it would be good to have a desk at home and a desk at work, and to be able to make the choice for yourself and, work it out of like, hey, especially for those of us with kids, and things like that. I think I'm hoping that we come out of this with somewhat of like a healthy medium between the two, rather than just being kicked out. But who knows? I mean, there's a large call center that's really close to where I work, and I know a lot of them have worked from home, and I'm just wondering, like, man, what is that like? Because this is, you're basically penalized for going to the bathroom outside of your break. And now you're putting somebody in their own house to answer these customer service calls. And so it's just like, what is that like? That's gotta be a very bizarre change. But for other things, I think you could absolutely do it from home. Yeah.
Well,
It's funny.
Sean has thought about this, but this work from home thing is gonna crash the price of commercial real estate.
Oh yeah, no, it's we've already lost some tenants too. but none of them so far, because they've discovered they can do this all at home. One of the companies just is folding. But you're going to get a lot of that. You're going to get a lot of that with office space going, well, geez, we can send 25 to maybe even 50% of our workforce home, and we just don't need the office space anymore. No, it's going to have a big impact. You've accelerated remote work by about 10 years in 2 months. Even I'm VPNing in to go do stuff on occasion. So yeah, it's you certainly have. You've impacted that world. And that's not true.
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I think your like IT infrastructure budgets will go way up because you will have to have some sort of server maintenance, and you'll have employees will have to go in and do that. But and I'm sort of concentric to Chris in terms of our careers. There's still going to be reasons to go in. Still going to be classes that have to have a hands-on component and things like that. But it's like you said, we're, if we ever, cycle back to where we were before all of this, it's not going to be by the end of the year. It's going to take a while because some people are not going to want to go back full time.
No, and I think that's going to come out of it, a permanent change out of this. You're going to have people who are going to found out they could do this remotely. Companies found out they could do this remotely and cut their overhead and still get the same production out of it. And they're going to do that. They're going to do it right now.
And in some cases, I really wouldn't be surprised if productivity even goes up.
Yeah, I think there
in
are
some areas
who may have been on the fence about it, who would recognize that clearly there'd be economic benefits to people working at home, but they're just not sold on it. Now they had to be sold on it.
Right.
This worked out pretty well. And I think, in some cases, certain industries are going to flourish in that environment, whereas commercial real estate might take a hit. I mean, our university is taking a hit. They're projecting enrollment drops that are enormous, and so they're asking for people to make across the board cuts across campus. But one of the few organizations on our campus that was basically almost entirely insulated from those cuts was IT. Because of the need for people to be able to transition everything and manage it.
Okay, Amish had something to say. And he's bigger than me, so I always defer to him.
But even my company was in the midst of planning for like a multi-million-dollar remodel of their the home office, and even now is like adding on another wing as we speak to, just because like we were busting at the seams, and now it's like you've just proven that 99% of your workforce can work from home, and there's people that are just never come back. We talk about like people leaving the churches and never coming back. There's people that are like working in corporate America that are not coming back. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe you go through with the remodel, but you have social distancing in mind, and just looking at the plans that they had, like people were just kind of sitting next to each other, and now they're just gonna have to like just redo that whole thing. Just working at home. It's funny. Just like 2 weeks ago, I'm sitting and I'm having like this real serious business conversation with this customer, and all of a sudden my kids are in the background in another room singing Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round. And it's a pretty intense conversation, and I just kind of stop, and the customer just starts just laughing, and I'm sorry, this is not professional. And he was just like, no, like that's pretty awesome, and just kind of added some levity to the situation. But yeah.
Well,
I'll preface meetings by saying, like, if you hear animals being slaughtered, that's just my kids. just keep talking and go forward.
Let me go back one, and coming out of a Roman Catholic background and having elderly parents, I have watched my parents become pretty committed to Catholic television. and going to mass on TV. And so one of the things that occurred to me, with this going on in our Protestant churches, is how many of your elderly are going to want to kind of insist maybe, hey, can't you guys keep live streaming? It's really helpful for me at home when I can't get to church. I don't feel up to it. And I'm not suggesting it's a good idea, but I'm certain those of you who are pastors or responsible for the church and church running, I'm betting you're going to get that request.
Yeah, I think we're committed to stream for a few months because we know there are going to be people who aren't comfortable coming back. And we're spending a bit more money to try to improve things, but it's a challenge. It's like running a TV show, a public access college TV show, but nonetheless, it's a challenge. But I don't think we want to stream permanently. But I think we're out of love for the brethren and the sisterin, as it were. We'll keep doing it longer than we'd probably like to. But it is a weird thing.
But I mean, it's all right. So like, I can understand the argument against streaming. Just because like maybe you're not doing it for the right reasons, but I mean, going forward, I mean, like, why wouldn't you, as a just local church congregation, if you're making it understood, this is not a replacement for church, but I'm thinking about like a lot of our shut-ins in the past, like how much would they have enjoyed just still being a part of the congregation, even though they're maybe in another city or they're infirmed and they're not able to take part. Like, I think now maybe we have that conversation of, maybe there's a benefit to streaming, and with the understanding that this is not a replacement for church, but we're doing this for people that can't come to church.
Let me ask Chris, if I can, if he would see any, like, I don't know, pastoral application to it. Is, going off of the shut-in infirmed idea, is that something where you would feel comfortable like putting it out there as like, hey, if this is you, reach out to me, and we do offer like a stream for it, for those of you who are unable to make it to service or can't, or do you feel like that would put you in this weird like arbiter position to determine whether or not people should be coming to church? Because I could see it going both ways. If it's someone in your congregation who you've known for a long time and kind of are doing your pastoral duties, I could see it being a pretty easy thing. But I can also see that there's a lot of gray area on something like that.
But it's one more discipline factor. It's one more thing to consider. But, let me unmute Chris. That might be helpful.
Yeah, I one of the reasons we're still streaming now is that we have a married couple, and the wife of the married couple is 7 months pregnant. She is from Canada and went back to Canada for a medical appointment. When she went back in, the Canadian government insisted that she go on a 16-day quarantine. And then before the quarantine was up, they shut the border down. So she is unable to be with her husband. He can't get over there. And the only contact that she has with our congregation is Bible study in the middle of the week, which we still do online, and also watching the stream on Sunday. And I told our people, we're committed to do this until she can be repatriated back in the United States. And then we will probably not do it anymore. We're not in a situation, the congregation I serve is relatively young. We don't really have a situation where we have infirm folk who feel like they can't make it, or it would be too difficult to make it. So it hasn't, to be honest, it hasn't really been a consideration for me as I've thought about it. Although I have thought, is there really any harm if our people generally understand that they need to be in public worship and they do come, and we have a small number, it's easy to keep track of that. Is it of some benefit at least to let people know we exist to continue the stream? So there may be some benefit there, but by general, I have a huge reluctance to do it unless it would be for something like that purpose.
Well, one little thing we didn't expect from our streaming, we did have people from, 15, 20 people from around the country or local area whose churches didn't have streaming who watched and expressed appreciation for it. So there's that too. You don't ever know, but it's just one more thing for church officers to think about, and we shouldn't be surprised that we get thrown new curves and have new challenges. Well, I don't think we're going to have time to talk about the last W I had in mind, which was women. The new Amy Bird book, which none of us have read, I trust.
But we all heartily endorse and lend everything that we have to.
And I'll just say, we would definitely have Amy Bird on the Presbycast if she would come. But I would want to read the book first. I'm quite sure I wouldn't agree with all of it. And the parts that would bother me most would, if there's anything that gives aid and comfort to female ordination or something like that, the church issues are of much greater concern to me than the societal and private issues are. I think that's how I'm different than a lot of people. But
Short, I'm with you though, and you had made a comment that you like the enemies she makes, and I do too. I haven't read her stuff, and I've read stuff here and there that I haven't agreed with completely. But man, I sure do like the enemies she makes.
Yeah, she's got some good ones. So I appreciate that. And we are not among
it's becoming like sports. You want to be more known for who you oppose than who you actually support.
Yeah.
As a Redskins fan, I will always oppose the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, and that's just another thing that's probably wrong with you, and I don't even know you, but you're off to a bad start.
That's another thing.
Does my premillennialism make it any better?
Well,
yeah, see, you just keep digging. Just keep showing.
we Sean, your boy Tullian was a big Dallas Cowboys fan.
Oh, don't start with my boy Tullian.
I think you guys buy jeans in the same store.
Florida reptile. Gosh.
I used to like it when Tullian would tweet a picture of himself from the airport security line. As soon as church was over, he would run to the Miami airport and fly to the Dallas Cowboys games on Sunday afternoon. And so I always loved those pictures.
I'll never know what persuaded Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church to hire that man.
Desperation, the desire for relevance, butts in the seat.
Who he was related
dollars.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. I could go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
they had a good thing going.
So,
sort of.
Any closing remarks from anyone? Now, we've talked about a lot of heavy things, and we might have been pessimistic, but this does not imply that any of us don't trust in the sovereignty of God, or that we value filthy lucre and earthly comfort above things eternal. But we do live in this world, and I think one of our points is there's more than one way to love your neighbor, and that them having the ability to eat and go to the doctor for normal ailments, those are important things too. So nothing simple about this, but we trust God will work out his purposes. So any words from any of you diverse gentlemen?
I just want to, since we're talking about sports, just remind everybody that the Golden State Warriors blew a 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals. And I'm signing off. Thanks, guys.
Oh, you can't sign off yet. You know how badly LeBron is hating this whole Last Dance, where everybody who never saw Jordan now realizes, oh, wait a minute, LeBron is nowhere close to this guy.
Yeah, and Amish shows his Cavaliers, his dirty Ohio sweatshirt there.
Dirty Ohio.
Yeah.
He's got a sweatshirt for radio.
I shook Mark Price's hand.
So, Chris, you do take care of those people up there. Is it what's the temperature now?
We were in the 40s today. We should be up to about 71 by the Lord's Day. My only concluding thoughts are: don't be an Erdman, justice for Machen, and keep the church doing what the church ought to be doing, and trust Christ to build up His church.
Amen.
Well, we should all contemplate what, and you know, I'll tip my hand. I'm going to have Daryl Hart back on to have a "What If Machen Had Lived Till 1960" show. That'd be very interesting. But I think it's pretty easy for us to imagine what Machen would think of the lockdown. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to come up with the Jaywalkers' take on that. So we do appreciate everyone who's joined us, and Resby will do his accustomed thing and let everyone know how much we do appreciate them.
Yeah, thanks guys for listening. Thanks for doing this. We are planning to do another show this week, so this will sort of be kind of bookend the week as it is with Presbycast. And I mean, the thing about working from home is now your wives have to listen to it, your kids. So you can really just spread the love around as you hear guys talk really slowly about super important things. So I just want to, Chris sort of took the catchphrase, but don't be an Erdman. We'll talk to you again in our next episode. The owls are not what they seem.
Don't waste your life.